G'day guys, we have the new Chaos Space Marine Codex in our hand and I'm about to do a full detailed breakdown, live streamed review of the entire book, but before I do, there's one unit in particular that stands out as absolutely phenomenally overpowered in this new book. So we're going to break down Warp Talons today, and I'm going to explain to you just why this is an absolute game-breaking change to the unit's ability.
Look for the Blood God.
G'day guys, I just wanted to take a second to talk to you about the exciting Blog for the Blood God fundraiser raffle, where you can buy tickets for your chance to win a set of neoprene objective markers and a pack of 50 Blog for the Blood God dice. If you'd like to buy some tickets, click on the link in the description of this video. You can scroll down and view the prizes there, and if you'd like to buy some tickets, select buy tickets, select how many tickets you would like to buy, select that you are over 18 and that you agree with the terms, and then I would recommend deselecting the subscription because who needs unnecessary emails, and then you can proceed to fill out your details. If you are an Australian resident, you will be required to select your state. If not, just select any state. It doesn't particularly matter as long as the street address and details of postage are correct as per above. And then you can go through, proceed on payment, and then it will submit your ticket sales. The reason we've decided to do a raffle in order to raise funds is because this year I have been named as captain for Team Australia for the WTC World Team Championships of Warhammer 40k. This is a once-in-a-lifetime, really exciting opportunity for me. However, as an Australian, that trip is extremely expensive, and unfortunately, life does what it does and has thrown a bunch of unforeseen expenses my way in the terms of veterinary bills for my very sick cat. So any help that we can get to send me to Europe to represent Australia would be greatly appreciated. And also, if there's any money left over at the end, it will go towards improving the quality and frequency of the content here on YouTube. So I very much appreciate any support that you are prepared to give, and I look forward to rewarding that with some exciting prizes. If this does well, we'll do multiple of these raffles because I've got plenty of stuff to give away, and I really do want to show some support for the community that supports me so well. So thank you very much for your consideration. If you'd like to buy a ticket, links are in the description below, and let's get into today's video. So by and large, there weren't that many monumental changes to units' abilities in the new Codex. There were a few bits and pieces here and there, but most units more or less perform the same role that they always have. The Warp Talons, however, are one exception to this. Their role in this new book is completely different to the way we used to run Warp Talons. Previously, you'd run small units of them and they were useful for going out and bullying your opponent's small units. They were fast, they were great at doing actions, they were relatively cheap. So they weren't really big anvils or missiles, they were just a little tech piece that you would use. But now, they've moved into a completely different role. So let's look at the datasheet and talk about what the changes are. Alright, so by and large, the stats of the unit haven't changed. They still do reasonable melee damage, they're still reasonably tough, they're still, a Warp Talon, right? The main change is the unit's ability, which is that at the end of the fight phase, if this unit was eligible to fight and is no longer within engagement range of any enemy models, you can pick it up and put it back in strategic reserves. This is a massive change to the way that this unit functions. So basically what you're going to be able to do now is charge something, kill it, and then disappear back into strategic reserves. So the implications for this are absolutely massive. You're essentially going to be able to have a unit of Warp Talons that can never realistically be targeted by enemy shooting. Because what you can do is you can put it in deep strike at the start of the game so your opponent can't shoot it because it's not on the table. Then, in your opponent's second movement phase, you can spend 1 CP to rapid ingress somewhere where your opponent can't see it, and therefore can't shoot it, and somewhere outside of 12 inches of your opponent so they can't charge it. So your opponent has no way of dealing damage to these Warp Talons. Then, in your turn, you're going to move out from that terrain piece you were hiding behind, you're going to kill something with the Warp Talons, then you're going to fuck off back into deep strike. And now, your opponent's turn, they can't do anything, you can rapid ingress them again and do the same trick. So you can recycle that unit of Warp Talons over and over again. Another really neat trick is that you can run 3 units of Warp Talons, which I genuinely think that's where most Chaos Space Marine players are going to start when writing their lists, is you basically get 3 of them, you send all 3 out, kill everything, and then disappear back into Deep Strike. And then, so let's say you're playing against somebody who's got a bunch of screens like scouts and stuff like that they're putting out to do objectives. They're, action monkeys. You're going to be able to go out, kill their action monkeys, and then disappear. And now your opponent can't respond to those warp talons. Then in your opponent's next turn, you're going to rapid ingress one of them, and then in your turn, you're going to deep strike the other two somewhere safe. If you make a 9-inch charge, that's great, but if not, it's not that big of a deal because you put them somewhere safe. You're going to send the warp talons in, the ones that rapid ingress, they're going to kill something, disappear back, and then the next turn, you're going to rapid ingress them back in again, and then send all three, hit 3 targets, disappear back, and your opponent is never going to be able to realistically engage with the warp talons. So this is going to be an absolutely massive meta shift. People are going to really struggle to solve this. There are a few things that you can do in order to solve this. One of them is have units that are so tough that when they hit you, you don't die, right? Because they can't disappear if you do this. However, there is a stratagem in one of the detachments that's going to make this quite interesting. So in the Renegade Raiders detachment, there is this stratagem that is going to allow you to, at the end of the fight phase, make a fallback move if your opponent still has models there. So this is going to allow you to make a move if there's no enemy models left, or make a fallback move. So what you can do is you can drop the Warp Talons down, hit something, and if you fail to kill it, and there's a couple models still in base contact with you, you can go, cool, they get to fight with a couple of models, and then you can spend this CP to fall back, and then disappear. Because it's your turn, you can choose the sequence. Both of these things happen at the end of the fight phase, so you can spend the CP, fall back, then use their ability to disappear. Which means that those Warp Talons are literally never getting tied up in combat. There's nothing your opponent can do. So you may be wondering, well, all of this sounds insanely broken, and it absolutely is. This is the most broken rule I think they've released for 10th edition. This is truly insane. Having a unit that's literally never targetable is crazy. So there are a few things that you can do to try to get around this. One of them is fights first. If you have fights first on your unit, that unit of Warp Talons can't just charge you. And the Warp Talons aren't that tough. They're only toughness 4 with a 3-up save. They can die. So things like Khorne Berserkers with fight first just became really interesting because they're one of the few things that can actually solve this problem. Another thing is indirect shooting, because they're going to be trying to rapid ingress these things where you can't see them, or deep strike them down where you can't see them. So if you have any form of indirect shooting whatsoever, that's going to be very effective as well. Another good one is things like Exalted 8-Bound or Scarbrand, or anything that can basically prevent your opponent from making a fallback move. That's going to be really effective as well. But all in all, I think the Warp Talons are an absolutely insane unit. I fully expect in the next data slate they're going to go up to like 30 points each based on this, because they are wild. But at the moment, be prepared to deal with people with 3 units of Warp Talons. Even things like the Orc, Green Tide. Everyone's like, oh, it's this big scary boogeyman of a list. It's like, yeah, but if 30 Warp Talons hit 1 unit of boys, they're going to kill it, and then all 30 of them are going to fuck off back into Deep Strike, and now those boys can't do anything, and then next turn, all 30 of them are going to go back in again, hit another unit, then disappear back into Warp Strike. It's wild. There's so many ways that this can be used to massive effect that's just absolutely insane. There is one thing to note, though, is that if they do this, they're not really taking you off of the primary objectives, right? Like, if you're on an objective, they hit you, they kill you, and then they disappear. Now no one holds that objective. So one of the things that you've got to look out for as a Chaos Space Marine player is making sure that in doing this, in trying to protect your Warp Talons, you're not doing it in such a way that you're sacrificing the primary objectives. And my advice for this would be to pick one objective that's in no man's land and sandbag that with a bunch of stuff, and then send your Warp Talons into the other ones, kill them off it, disappear off it yourself, and that way your opponent scores no primary, and you have one that you've sandbagged with something tough. It might be a Rhino with some Legionaries in it, and some Cultists, and a bunch of other stuff. You want to throw a fair few things onto one objective, and then use your Warp Talons to bully another objective. And if you do that, you can hurt their primary whilst holding it yourself. You don't want to just put 3 units of Warp Talons on the list and expect them to do all of the work, because if they stay on the objective, they're very vulnerable, and if they disappear, well, now they're not holding it. And I'm looking forward to deep diving this unit in greater detail, but it's definitely one of those units that you're going to want to look out for. So, yeah, Tomorrow morning, first thing, I'm going to be getting up and doing a full live stream where I'm going to go through every detachment, every Codex rule, every data sheet change. I'm going to go through the whole thing. It's going to be like a 3-hour long stream of me reading through, answering your questions, your comments, having a conversation with you guys, whilst having a play with this new book. We might even write a few lists live. So if that's something that you'd be interested in, I'll chuck the details up on the screen now for the time that that's going to be out. And I look forward to seeing you there. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I'll see you in the next one.
The Warhammer community suffers from some of the most prohibitively expensive essentials in the world, especially Australian content creators. Every single day, Dean wants to create content, but he can't. Suffering from old, worn-out brushes, expensive model kits, and costly software and equipment he can't endure much longer. Just look at this dirty paint water. Would you drink this? Would you let your child? Even a small monthly donation can help provide Dean with clean paint water, basic tools for survival, and access to life-saving information and education. So please, follow the links in the description below and find out how you can sponsor a mad cunt like Dean today and end the suffering. Suffering that is cruel, unsustainable, and your fault.